Good evening. My name is Brunessa Drayton, and I serve as the Chief Assistant to Chairwoman Lisa Cupid. I would like to thank each and every one of you who are here this evening, as well as those that are at home watching virtually. We are so honored to have you joining us tonight for the Chairwoman's State of the County Address. Before we get started, we will have an invocation led by Reverend Jennifer Allen. Reverend Jennifer Allen is a native of Columbia, South Carolina. She currently resides in Powder Springs, Georgia, with her husband and her 2 children. Reverend Jennifer was ordained as an elder in the AME Church in 2004. She serves as Turner Chapel's AME Church in Marietta, Georgia, as an associate minister, a member of the TCC Music Ministry, a supporter of the prayer ministry, and a supporter of the women's ministry. Reverend Allen formerly served as the executive director of the church's nonprofit program called the Turner Hill Community Development Corporation in Marietta. Jesus said, "We are all called to serve, not to be served." This is Reverend Allen's foundation for ministry and for following God's will in all things. She loves Jesus because he's her very best friend. If we can have Reverend Allen join us here for the invocation.
Thank you, Brunessa. Let us pray. Gracious God, we are grateful for this day that you have allowed us to gather to hear, oh God, from the leadership in this county. God, we thank you for the opportunity, for the wisdom, for the insight, for you know the journey that we have all faced, oh God, just in the last year, the changes that our great nation has had to face and endure. God, we are grateful for the leadership that has pressed forward, that has continued to do the work that they have been called to do. Our leadership nationally, locally, regionally, oh God, city and here in the great county of Cobb County, Georgia. We thank you, oh God, for their perseverance. We thank you, oh God, for their insight. We thank you, oh God, for their wisdom. Reach and touch each and every individual as they go into this 2021 year, presiding, guiding, providing insight, providing wisdom, providing leadership, managing, oh God, many, many, many different tasks. Even when it becomes overwhelming, God, I ask that you rain down your peace that only you can provide, that will allow clear thoughts, clear minds, hearts of compassion, mindset of unity, and working together to prevail. We trust you, oh God. We honor you. We ask all of these prayers in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen and amen.
Thank you, Reverend Allen. We will now, if I can ask everyone to stand, we will now do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I now have the honor of introducing or bringing to the microphone our Chairwoman of Cobb County, Lisa Cupid.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to see some familiar faces and some faces which will likely become familiar. Because if there's anything that I hope to do tonight is to stir up in you a desire to want to be involved if you have not been already. And so I appreciate you being here. Vanessa, thank you so much for that introduction. I certainly appreciate that prayer leading us off tonight, and I appreciate those who are here in a distanced fashion. This is our first state of the county that I believe that has been done for our citizens in the evening, and it was very important to me because I want to ensure that you are a part of such a significant moment as we review the milestones and accomplishments of our prior year, and as we talk about things moving forward for us in Cobb. For those of us who are joining virtually, thank you for being here, and I look forward to you also continuing to be engaged in matters of our county. This morning, I spoke to the chamber, and I have the bad news again of sharing with you. This is our second address, and I have the good news of sharing this is our second address. So any kinks that we had this morning, I pray will have been worked out between the gap in time that we had since then. As you all know, 2020 has been a year like no other. And while many of us thought that we would walk through that year with perfect vision to accomplish our goals, we were really set in derision with all that occurred. And we can have moments now that we can laugh about from, at least for me, Googling how to craft your own toilet paper and, going through embarrassing moments of pets and children making themselves known during Zoom meetings. Certainly, I know I have a storybook of experiences from this year, things to laugh about, but things that I have cried about. Certainly the loss of loved ones, the loss of social connections, loss that I know many have experienced with loss of income, through loss of jobs, loss of businesses. For some people, they've had a loss of purpose during this time by not having a consistency of schedule and a loss of sense of normalcy. While we've gone through a lot last year, I am glad that not all of us have lost our humanity. And I'm grateful that so many have stepped up in so many ways to support their fellow colleagues, their neighbors, and citizens. Here are some of the ways that we've stepped up in Cobb County.
It's just a good program, and it does help the seniors, and we appreciate it. They started doing the curbside pickup. They let me know I could get this, and I was excited.
When you want to do something right, you come to Cobb County, that's for sure.
If you want to do something right, come to Cobb County. I know that a certain group that has done a lot right during this time has been our public health workers. While we were wondering if we should wear masks, remember that, or socially distance or limit gatherings, they were responding to the crises of people suffering from COVID-19, other illnesses, and isolation. In Cobb, COVID claimed the lives of over 500 of our peers, and more than 37,000 cases were reported. Cobb County worked closely with Cobb Douglas Public Health to provide now vaccination sites, but last year testing sites across our county in partnership with WellStar Cobb and other civic organizations. We've also set up a testing site at Jim Miller Park. All on the front lines responded, sacrificing the normalcy of their lives at home with their families for our families. For those who are in healthcare, I thank you and want to give a special thanks to Dr. Memark, Lisa Crossman, and their team of employees at Cobb Douglas Public Health. We appreciate you helping us get through this. For us to be able to lead during a pandemic, we had to have leaders who were willing to get out and to take some risks to put themselves up for running for office. And we are fortunate to have one of those persons who was successful here with us tonight with Commissioner Jerica Richardson, who's Commissioner of District 2. And I appreciate you stepping up to serve. Alongside her, we elected Commissioner Monique Sheffield, who serves as District Commissioner of District 4. Their leadership and the continuing leadership of Commissioners Kelly Gambro and also Commissioner Joanne Burrell usher in Women's History Month with Cobb County's first all-female Board of Commissioners. Did I hear a clap? Maybe I wanted to hear one. We serve alongside our first female county manager, Dr. Jackie McMorris. For commissioners who are here, well, please raise your hand. I would ask you to stand to be recognized. This is such an intimate affair. You can choose either one, to stand or to wave, but we certainly appreciate your presence. Yes, let's recognize her. I believe she accomplished history just here in District 2 as well, being first female, maybe African-American commissioner here, and possibly the youngest as well. Also adding to our women's history was Connie Taylor as Clerk of Superior Court and new Superior Court judges Kelly Hill and Angela Brown. I also want to recognize our first African-American Sheriff Craig Owens and first African-American male District Attorney Flynn Brody. With each addition to the fabric of Cobb's leadership comes strategy and inspiration that consider the success of all people here in our county. Cobb's continuous success is buoyed by our economic success. Recognizably, this was strained in 2020. Some of the places that we had ventured to regularly prior to the pandemic are not here, but fortunately some still are. And a lot of them have had to pivot to providing mobile services and to cleaning their facilities and ensuring that their customers were distanced. Many of our businesses have had to gravitate to teleworking and virtual meeting technology. And I want to again thank Cobb Douglas Public Health for your initiative in helping so many of our businesses navigate the nuances of our emergency orders. Venues like Six Flags Park and Whitewater were able to continue operating because of Cobb Douglas Public Health support. Our county chamber also initiated multiple events to educate businesses on how to access financial resources. In partnership, Cobb County Government and Select Cobb awarded $48 million to help small businesses. This included 51% minority-owned businesses, 44% women-owned, and 7% veteran-owned businesses. And this would not have happened without the initiative of many of our leaders in business, our leaders at the chamber, but also business owners in the community, letting us know how we could craft a program that would be helpful to them. And I appreciate their participation and the participation of anyone in this room who helped with that effort. When it comes to large businesses, they also fared well through the strength that people had brought to them by just staying at home and seeing some things that needed to be done. And in fact, Home Depot experienced record-breaking sales that I know my family contributed to during the pandemic and possibly yours. Because when you're home, you see things that you weren't used to seeing, and it just doesn't look right. But Wellstar Kennestone opened up its new emergency department, and Lockheed Martin Incorporated was awarded an over $3 billion contract for building 50 C-130J planes at our site in Marietta, which is pretty awesome. And while Cobb retained and grew our own businesses, we also attracted new ones. Last year, Select Cobb, which helps to recruit businesses here in Cobb through the chamber, they reported 15 project wins totaling $165 million in investment and totaling 2,400 jobs. Another metric exhibiting Cobb's strength economically is our AAA bond rating. And we've been able to maintain that last year during our pandemic, signaling confidence in the county's stability and future outlook. While Cobb's largest retail and hospitality businesses have certainly been impacted, they have pivoted to providing more initiatives locally to encourage people to travel in Cobb. And Cobb Galleria further signaled hope for us in being one of the first convention centers to reopen in the metro area. Cobb's strong economy is complemented by our strong housing market. It is unbelievable, but last year we provided more housing permits or more single-family housing permits last year than we did in 2019. And for any of you who work in real estate or tried to buy a home, you know that this market is quite limited. The inventory is small as many people are looking to move during this time. Our median home values actually increased last year by 7% to $310,000. And this compares to Georgia's median home value of $265,000. These numbers reflect the attractiveness of Cobb and our place as the sixth most affluent county in the state of Georgia. But it also helps to explain the continued challenges that many of our residents have with affordable housing. Right now, you see arguments taking place about whether or not we should increase our minimum wage of $7.25. Someone working full-time on that salary is earning $15,000 a year. That tells me that they are going to struggle to live in Cobb County. While this issue is a very large issue for us to address, we have been able to set aside dollars to nonprofits to help people with evictions, whether it be through rental properties or if they've had challenges in paying their mortgages. And I want to thank Starseed and Home Free for their partnership. I also want to thank our Chief Magistrate, Brendan Murphy, as he was quite initiative in connecting tenants who were in delinquency with those nonprofit organizations so they would not be evicted. And I think that takes a lot of heart for a judge to do that, that stands in between a tenant and a landlord. When it comes to food, Cobb County provided funding to help combat food insecurity. You saw a video of some of the food drives that we've had. And I'd like to just recognize the significant program we had with Operation Meal Plan, which was a partnership with the Cobb Chamber, Cobb Community Foundation, Cobb Collaborative, the Braves Organization, and others, where they supported local restaurants who then were able to support our most vulnerable with food in our communities. Many of our departments, as you saw also in the video, helped in providing food distribution programs throughout the county. Undoubtedly, kids and families were most impacted as schools transitioned from in-class learning to at-home learning and a variation thereof. And I believe we have tonight School Board Member Sharice Davis, who I'm sure knows all too well about that. If you can wave so we can see you, and let's just thank her for her presence and her work on behalf of our students every day. Teachers' responsibilities expanded from teaching to sanitizing, as parents had to pivot between being caretaker and schoolmaster while also working or trying to find work and trying to keep their roofs over their head. Some mastered this transition, some struggled. Still, many stepped up. And I want to take time to thank Cobb County Schools for providing Wi-Fi hotspots throughout the county, as many students struggled to have access to technology to continue their learning. The City of Marietta schools caught my attention in that their superintendent prioritized the feeding of their children first, because they knew if a child was hungry, a child would be less likely to learn. And they also made sure that their teachers' children were taken care of, because if the teachers were worrying about their own kids, they could not teach ours. And so I want to thank them for their initiative. In higher education, Kennesaw State University enrollment soared, resulting in the university becoming the second largest in Georgia. Still, their leaders took time to reach out to their freshmen to make sure that they were okay as they transitioned to college in the middle of a pandemic. Life University remained a leader in chiropractic education and also expanded their online programs and courses. Moreover, Chattahoochee Tech opened up its Health Science Academy during a time where more are needed in the profession. A win for us in education was with our VECTOR program, and VECTOR, VECTR, stands for Veterans Education, Career, and Transition Resources Center, which will open up at Chattahoochee Tech. They partnered with Kennesaw State and Georgia Tech to provide a fast track for veterans who've already served to apply that service in obtaining their post-secondary education. And that program would not have occurred, I think, without the advocacy of so many in our community, and particularly our chamber and our legislative leaders. As I'm talking about education, I can't forget the little ones, those 0 through 5, who still have benchmarks to meet in the middle of a pandemic. And I want to thank our daycare workers for you taking time to keep your doors open and you taking on the risk of what that could mean for you and your own families to make sure that the young children of families were being taught and also helping parents to work. And so, again, I know we honored Sharice, but let's just give another applause for our members in the education community, whether here or online, or who may watch this via YouTube one day in the future. In 2020, Cobb County continued its investment in public safety. Cobb County government opened a new public safety police academy in Austell. I'm wearing my mask. I've gotten so comfortable, I didn't even know it was on. Okay, this is part 2 of our program. Police officers, I can talk so much more freely. Police officers moved into new headquarters on Commerce Park Drive.
We also opened a new state-of-the-art medical examiner's office in October. The Board of Commissioners improved the salaries of our certified public safety personnel and provided bonuses. Our very own Sheriff Deputy Tyrone Reed was honored the Cobb Chamber's Public Safety Employee of the Year for his heroic actions to apprehend a suspect at the scene of an Atlanta killing. Cobb police officers Quinius Lyles and Andrew Abernathy were also honored with the Medal of Valor for their heroic actions during a double shooting vehicle chase. In fire, we appointed a new police chief in Bill Johnson, and we also constructed new fire stations across the county. And don't they look good? They make our community look very good. In Cobb, we recognize the indispensability of our men and women in public service and in public safety, including emergency 911 and animal control. And the indispensability of those in public safety made it all the more heartbreaking as we watched the deaths that occurred last year and the mistaken intrusions on persons of color. Cobb Countians, of all races came together to support Black lives. Families organized in Smyrna, and marches took place in Marietta. Cities passed resolutions against racism, and conversations about race equity were hosted by Cobb County government and several nonprofit organizations, cities, and civic groups and churches. Cobb County residents also made their voices known at the polls last year, and I was remiss in not recognizing our Public Services Director, whose agency not only encompasses elections, but our parks, senior services, libraries, Cobb Extension, Cobb Senior Services, and I hope I'm not missing another one. But Bill Tanks, yes, please raise your hand and be recognized, and just thank you for being here. He can tell you Cobb Elections had an extremely busy year under the microscope. In addition to implementing a new state voting system, remember all the controversy with that? They experienced a record number of ballots cast with 400,000 people going to the polls in November. We are a county of going close to 800,000. This is a significant turnout. In fact, it was a record turnout for us here in Cobb. They worked tirelessly through several obstacles, counting, recounting, and recounting ballots. 400,000 ballots were cast. Many Cobb County employees from other departments stepped up to assist, and our residents also volunteered and worked at the polls. At the polls last year, while we were certainly focused on leadership changes, we did have a significant accomplishment in approving our 2022 SPLOST program, or a Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. That program enables us to be able to build infrastructure and also amenities within our county. Through that program, we will provide $329 million to transportation projects, $82 million to public safety, $46 million to countywide projects, and $27 million to public service capital projects. DOT always gets the lion's share of our SPLOST program. The roads that we drive on are not inexpensive, including our sidewalks. Last year, DOT closed out more than 8,000 work orders across the county. And if you can remember, with all that occurred last year, we also had a hurricane. Hurricane Zeta hit Cobb and blew down many trees. And our DOT responded to that within 3 days, responding to 400 locations, and partnered with our Cobb County water system and Cobb Parks. DOT delivered on 2016 and passed SPLOST projects that include but are not limited to a multi-use trail along Mapleton Parkway, the old 41 bridge replacement over CSX Bridge, construction of the Windy Hill Road and Terrell Mill Connector, and intersection improvements at Act West Due West at Jim Owens and Mars Hill Church Roads. Efforts are underway to begin implementation of the Chattahoochee Riverlands project
to create a sense of place along 30 miles of the Chattahoochee in the metro area. Cobb County is fortunate in that the pilot for that 30-mile initiative is going to be right here in Mableton. As I look to the road ahead, I want to make sure that I take time to thank our veterans who served. You make it possible for us to be in rooms like this today with less worry than some others may have in rooms across our nation or in other countries. We thank you for your service. And one way that we desire to thank you for your service is in constructing a Veterans Memorial. And we unveiled a view of that project last year in 2020. And that would not have been done without support of Cobb Parks. So we thank you, Public Services Agency Director, once again, for all that your team does. And in the interest of time, I could not list the dozens upon dozens of projects within Parks and Recreation, but I know it is through their work that citizens are able to recreate themselves every day. Looking forward again to the road ahead. Even though we are still in the midst of a pandemic, our future remains bright. We are fortunate to live in a county with great schools, highly educated and civic-oriented residents, attractive neighborhoods, numerous parks and amenities, and strong businesses. We have heroes and sheroes in our midst. And while our leadership has changed in the county, our success and our potential has not. Still, recognizably, there are parts in our county that should be better considered in the success of Cobb County. As we look across our county and even in our meeting rooms or boardrooms, we have opportunity to evaluate who has a seat at the table or who is sitting on the dais and who is not. A voice is as important as having a seat as much as a vote and value when people come together. And that is something as leaders that is important to make sure that we recognize, and it's important to me to make sure that we are mindful of as we lead here in Cobb. And so one way that I wanted to ensure that we're being mindful of all in Cobb is for me to be all in Cobb. So I've created 5 IN goals, I-N. And the first goal is to be a leader of integrity. To lead it with integrity, it means you want to be the best and do your best, but it also means having tough and honest conversations where we may not be. You know, we recognize our good, but we recognize things that are not so good. And we try to figure out how we can get to where we need to be. So we can address challenges like board appointments and disclosures in a way that may seem difficult, but that make us better because we all want Cobb County to be better. Commissioners began this process of trying to make Cobb County better by having a retreat at the beginning of the year, where we did have some honest dialogue about where we are with the county and with our staff. And I can't remember when we've had such a candid discussion ever over my 8 years as a commissioner. And so for some, while having a retreat may just seem perfunctory, for us, this was a significant milestone to be being able to have an honest conversation about how we can lead Cobb County to the best of our ability. I think all of us should be able to do that and expect that if we're going to move Cobb County forward. The second goal is for us to be inclusive. Part of me being here tonight and having a State of the County address with our citizens and also virtually in the evening where people are not working is out of my desire to be inclusive. That, you know, there's a saying that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, you have to go together. And we have gone far as a county. I think we can go further as a county if we make sure that we are being inclusive and mindful of others in our success. That means including commissioners and civic leaders and stakeholders and staff when we make decisions, and considering their voices at the table. You know, from a business perspective, It may mean considering partnership opportunities with minority-owned businesses and women-owned businesses, with local small businesses that are in your community. I have been an advocate of community education because I think that educating citizens and engaging them is part of the way that we include them in what we're doing here in Cobb County, so that you can see, the Oz behind the veil. And after having initiated Cobb 101, you can just see the strength of our citizens across our county. And so I'm grateful for the initiative I took, and also Commissioner Richardson and Commissioner Gambrill, in having a board application process for people to serve on our dozens of boards and authorities. It gives people opportunity to step up and help lead in our county. Throughout these first couple of months, I've been meeting with a number of people. Some people will say I've been meeting so much, I'm actually all in meetings. I've met with mayors, judges, other elected officials, as well as business, community leaders, nonprofit leaders, faith leaders, and I still have many more to go. And I recognize some of you as being civic leaders in our community, and I thank you for being here tonight. I particularly want to thank the leaders that we've worked with at the Chamber, Sharon Mason, who leads it, and also Kevin Greiner, CEO of Gas South, for his initiative in coordinating business roundtable meetings for me to meet with CEOs here in Cobb County. So the second end goal was to be inclusive. The third end goal is for us to make intelligent decisions. We are a highly educated county, and we have opportunity to be strategic in how we respond to things. No one would have ever thought we'd be in a pandemic, but there's some things that we do know that are coming. And so I think we have opportunity to be wise about how we do things, and whether or not it's through listening to people in meetings like this and taking in qualitative data, or taking time to do research and gathering quantitative data. All of that helps us to be intelligent in the decisions that we were making. The fourth goal is for us to be innovative. And certainly this pandemic has forced innovation on us like no other time period has. I don't think I knew what a Zoom meeting really was, or cared to know what it was, before 2020. I was under the impression that most of my meetings had to take place in person. In fact, I didn't even like having phone meetings. Now, when my assistant asks me if I want a phone meeting, I'm like, sign me up. 15 minutes, that's what it takes. So technology has certainly made itself known as one of the conduits of efficiency, and how we can be effective in still operating day to day, and also reaching more people than we've ever been able to reach, as there are some people who can't make it here tonight, but they're joining us virtually. But innovation, it could be with our businesses and the type of businesses that we attract here to Cobb County, but it's also in just how we think. We have a strong county that has done well historically, and it's sometimes our strength is in our accomplishment, and that it's sometimes difficult to consider there's a different way to do things. And certainly the pandemic has forced us to do that. But imagine if we were innovative in how we thought, just how creative and inclusive we could actually be. The next goal is for us to not be afraid to invest in Cobb County. You, your home, your business, your family are products of the amount of time and resources that you invest into them. And our county is no different. And we've invested a lot in services. We've invested a lot with our special purpose local option sales tax program. We have not invested as much as we should in maintaining all of our assets, both physical and human. We have not regularly and annually funded a capital maintenance plan, which is unfortunate when you're in beautiful buildings like the one we are in. You want this to last for your lifetime and perhaps the lifetime of your children. We also have human assets that we need to invest in our employees that work at the county. They go above and beyond for us every day. As you're seating here, a lot of them are standing or seated around the perimeter of the room, making sure that we're operating, making sure that we're safe, making sure that we're virtual. But there are a lot of us who make sure that our citizens are served every day. And for us to be a county as affluent and successful that we have been, it is not a positive thing when they have gone many years without getting the return for their investment by way of merit. And I believe just last year reported for 11 years they received raises 3 times. I don't know how many of you would be motivated to stay where you are, but I think they're motivated because they believe in serving the public. They believe in what they do. They believe in the service standard that they provide for our county, but we must also believe in them. If we expect the best, that we will pay them accordingly. So again, those 5 end goals, if you can remember them, they were for us to, or for me to lead with integrity, for us to be inclusive, for us to be intelligent, innovative, and for us to not be afraid to invest. Moving forward, 5 priority areas that I think are very important for us in 2021 starts with COVID response and recovery, whether that recovery is economically or whether it's socioeconomically. We must do what it takes to prevent the spread. And even though we're increasing our vaccinations, with variants and still with us not reaching herd immunity and only getting to a very small fraction of those eligible to be vaccinated, we must continue to do what you're doing right now. We must wear our masks. We must wash our hands and socially distance to the best of our ability. Another important priority for the next year is transportation and transit. We know that we passed our SPLOS program. We will be investing in roads and in trails. We must do more when it comes to transit to make sure that we are being a connected county, not just internally, but in our region. And that's important if we want to stay competitive, but it's important if we want to keep people going to jobs and going to school, as right now, 80% of our citizens use transit for such a purpose. I have asked commissioners to help me please think outside the box for what we can do when it comes to transportation in our county. Some of you may have been involved in our Cobb transportation plans meetings last year, but we're hoping to have more meetings and more ways to hear from residents and what our possibilities should be, where we're asking the public to obligate a penny for 30 years. 4th I have on my list is for us to be mindful of elections. We had a record number of people participate in elections last year, and we are all vested in making sure that we have fair and accessible elections. I don't think anyone wants somebody voting who shouldn't be, but we want all voting who can and are interested in voting. And it's heartbreaking to see what's going on in our state when it comes to legislation about elections that seems to want to take us to a time that we thought we had already moved past, a time where we could not have been together in a room like this and I couldn't be standing before you. I believe a healthy Cobb County is one where our citizens are engaged, and being engaged includes voting and making sure that their leadership reflects and represents the majority interest of our citizens. Finally, social justice and equity are concerned with policing. It is vital that we ensure that we keep our police and citizens safe and that we ensure everyone has a seat at the table. And it's really not just up to me as a chairwoman to do that. It's up to everyone, and looking at the circles where we can make sure others are reflected at the table. It can just be in who's in your organizations. It could be in who you do business with, but we have opportunity to look around and see, can we do something different? Well, I think when we are all engaged, the possibilities for our county are endless. We have what it takes for us to be all in Cobb and for all to be all in Cobb. I ask for you to help join me in that effort, for us to have a Cobb County that's future is bright today, but can be even brighter tomorrow. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to us being all in together. Thank you. That went so much better than this morning. I should do all of these at 7 p.m. at night. But with that, I think my team, Jennifer Duvall isn't here with us. She was here with us this morning. But I do have, she's here in the back. Look at Jennifer. Thank you for being here tonight. Jennifer Duvall serves as my executive assistant, and Vanessa serves as my chief assistant. And they have asked for questions. So if I briefly heard what the questions were, and I cannot even remember. So I hope I'm not embarrassed, as we are live and being recorded. So let's see what we have.
Chairwoman, thank you so much. We
Yes.
did have 3 questions that were sent in.
Okay.
And I do have a few index cards here. So if anyone is interested in, writing the question, we'll try to get to it. So if I could get Jennifer to help me with that, that would be great. But I'm waiting on Jennifer. I have the cards here.
And please give a round of applause to my staff. They are awesome.
Thank you,
They keep me together.
Chairwoman.
Yes.
The first question is, if the county would pay, the person's question is, would the county pay equal attention to the ordinary commercial zoning applicants versus large influential applicants, specifically in District 3? This person's experience is the county bent over for big influential companies, even with many zoning objections, approves applications while rejecting the small guy application by even one individual zoning objection.
Man, I get to start off with that question. But the reality is zoning is tough. That's a tough question, but zoning is a tough ordeal when you're talking about property rights and the permanent impact to communities. There is a lot riding on all sides involved with zoning. I ask that you help us. Whoever asked that question, we need to continue to pose that if we're going to be inclusive, to consider everyone with respect. I think the more we have questions like that, the more it will give us pause, because what I'm sensing is that there could be a lot at stake with larger development, but also think of all that's at stake when you have an individual person putting in all that they have into an investment. So if that's an area that we need to do better in, I take that as a charge to be mindful of that as chair. I am not as directly involved in zonings in districts because I want each commissioner to lead their area, and I don't want to supersede their thoughts on what should happen with a zoning case. However, there are some perspectives I have as chair to be global or mindful of the full impact, and this is one that I will add to the list. So whoever asked that question, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. And I've seen that.
I'm suffering for 15 years. My properties are suffering for 15 years.
I'm sorry to hear that, but thank you for letting us know that. Again, it's something I know I will be mindful of. You have another commissioner who's here tonight, so I'm sure she will take this into consideration, hearing this directly from you, because I know to say that it's suffering, the impact of it is more than you're articulating, even here tonight. You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Chairwoman. And just for a point of clarification, I'm just using a point of personal privilege and not putting the individuals' names out there, just,
Okay,
in an effort to protect their privacy. I think that's only right.
thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Chairwoman, with the growing multicultural groups moving into the county, what effort is your office office going to take to engage the skills of this group?
Thank you for asking. In this room are actually some people who participated in our first multicultural event last year. I think we attracted more than 2,500 participants. It was outstanding and surpassed our expectations, but we have opportunity to do more. So it was my interest to start a multicultural, group and to listen to where there are more opportunities, as I've heard feedback for those that participated who first asked when we're going to have the next one. And unfortunately, with the pandemic, we didn't have it again last year and likely may not this year just because of the numbers involved. But who knows? Who knows what can happen between now and August? But there have been some interest to look at how we can be sensitive to business interests that people have and some other interests that different cultures may have with other services here in the county. So I've been getting some feedback on some different boards to create or different advisory boards to have, and that certainly will be one of them. Some people may not know, but my background is that my parents are both from Guyana, South America, and I can tell you, growing up as a first-generation American, there are some nuances and some strengths when you come from other places, but there's synergy when you can be sensitive to that because those that may not be from that background aren't. And when we talk about being inclusive, part of that inclusivity is just being mindful of what our interest of others. So I'm smiling at Vanessa because I've turned to her to help me lead that charge. And so we certainly look forward to making that happen. And also, so does your local commissioner here, Jerica Richardson, as she has talked about the strength of the Brazilian community that's here and a desire to better support that. So I see that dovetailing into that initiative.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
as an immigrant from Panama, Republic of Panama, I can completely understand the nuances of coming to a new country and navigating a new world.
Yes.
So I understand that. Another question that came in was, has there been any consideration to adding seats to the commission based on the overall growth of our county?
I see someone clapping. What is the sound of one hand clapping? I say that because I think, for me, if I had a choice to add more commissioners or to add more people serving our communities by way of staff, I would choose the latter. Only because I think if there are gaps in service, we have gaps in the people who can actually respond directly. It's one thing for a constituent to call me, but when you call me, I'm calling a staff member. And because of the challenges or gaps that I've seen in the departments, I think there are issues there. I see some issues in the commissioners' departments. We have one assistant. Having two here tonight is by way of some creativity, but uniqueness that comes with the chair's office, and they stay busy. But our commissioners who are serving districts that have 175,000 people need help. Even if you had more elected officials, commissioners are policymakers. It is our staff that does the work. And usually when I have people call me, they are calling because they need work done. So would you rather invest in a layer of policymakers? I've seen some entities that have more policymakers at our state and in our federal government. And God bless my peers in those organizations. But I perceive that it's probably a little bit more difficult to even make policy. I'm going to leave it at that. I want to cause no offense. So needless to say, I think we need to be more robustly supported. If you were to look at Cobb County compared to other comparable counties in Georgia, they have more than a commission assistant to assist them. And in fact, commissioners are supposed to work part-time. Let me tell you, the only thing part-time is the salary. Nothing is part-time about these roles. People let me know that when I go pick up mail from my mailbox. So we have a better opportunity to support commissioners so that they can listen, but beyond that, to support current commissioners better, because that's less costly than adding new commissioners who need to be supported better. But then I think they need to be supported better by having what I've seen others have is a policy or project assistant to help them. Because I tell you, as we make policy, I'm fortunate I've been a policy analyst for the state of Georgia, but I do my own research, or I'm asking my chief assistant to do research. And we have many decisions that we need to make every 2 weeks. It's mind-boggling to keep the county running, but we don't even have a policy department in the county to help us. And a lot of other localities at least have a policy department to help us vet these things. If you were to talk to staff, they would tell you we could be much better run by trying to build up what we have, not creating new things that will only end up having similar gaps and challenges because we haven't addressed the ones that already exist. So personally, I've heard conversation about it. Being inside, I would not support it. I think the more you have, the more it takes away from the specialness of the smaller size of local government.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Yeah.
We had a couple more questions come in, so if I can go ahead with those.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. You mentioned during your address about elections.
Yes, ma'am.
And one of the questions that has come in is, what are some solutions that the county can use to combat the consequences of the recent election legislation?
Ooh, I feel like I'm taking the SAT. What are some solutions the county can use to combat the impact of the current legislation? How can I be innovative here? I would say that I don't believe we would be limited by way of providing early voting sites. So as far as accessibility is concerned, we can still do that. I don't know if drop boxes may be limited, which I presume would be, because it's my understanding absentee ballots would be limited, so they would just be used less. I think the greatest ability to combat it is through the current decision-making body, and were it to pass, it'd be at the federal level. Really, here at the state county, we are governed by state law. In fact, there are laws that state we are governed by state law, so we cannot do anything that undermines that. That doesn't mean outside of law, are there some practices that we can use to make it more accessible, which again, I'm very pleased by the elections director's willingness to expand early voting sites. She actually did that, I believe, in 2016. And so we may have to be creative on that end, but you may have to be creative on your end, right? I'm not going to preach, but we all know the significance of what it means to vote. We've had a lot of people go door to door, make calls. How many of you, like me, received like a dozen postcards and letters? I mean, my husband thought if he voted, they would stop texting him. And he's like, how can I tell them? And I said, the system already shows it, but they're still texting him. So everybody did what they can, and as annoying as that may be, perhaps that worked to let people know the significance of elections. So I think, it's almost like whack-a-mole. You could try to shut it down over here, and it's going to pop up that you're just going to see people be creative again to let people know to go out and vote. And they should, because civic participation is important. At least people let me know that I voted you in, I can vote you out.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I believe based on the time we have one time for one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
And this deals with traffic. Of course, there's massive construction taking place in Smyrna on Windy Hill between South Cobb and Atlanta Road. The traffic is bottlenecked in Smyrna. any plans on how to address that, or do you have anything you can share with us?
So on tomorrow's agenda, there is a agenda item to address our current 2016 SPLOST, where we'll be looking at what we can do with revenue above projections. That means when you first voted for the SPLOST program, you thought you'd get X amount of money, but you actually got Y. And so that difference can be allocated toward projects that weren't robustly funded or funded at all in the SPLOST. And I say not funded at all because we have a bucket that's called federal match projects, where it's almost like a wish list that you throw all the projects on there and you say, if federal money comes down, if other matching source comes down, we've identified these projects and we'll put them on the list. So one project that was already identified for SPLOST is to address the Windy Hill corridor by creating a Windy Hill Boulevard. And that's on the list for tomorrow. There's some additional monies that's needed to make that project happen. That project is in partnership with the city of Smyrna. And should commissioners be willing, and I see Commissioner Jerica nodding her head, should they be willing, we will have more money to make that project happen. And I know there's still a gap there, but there may be some creativity to still move it forward with that gap. And I think that will help with that project.
Thank you, Chairwoman. That's all we have time for.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa, and thank all of you. This was enjoyable. This was very helpful tonight. And again, I'm hoping that we will be all in for COB together. Thank you and have a good night.